All right. Looks like we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Remix Roadmap Planning live stream.
Right.
Uh, if you're watching this stream, you probably know who we are already, but if you don't, I'm Michael. This is Ryan. What's up? Remix Roadmap Planning live stream. You got to turn off the audio on your side because I can hear it. If you're watching this stream, Ryan, turn up your speakers.
I did, and it still just kept going.
So I just closed the window, so now I can't see the chat. Rip the cord out of the back of your computer. That's what I do whenever my audio is acting up. I always just
unplug it.
I'm unplugging everything. I'm going to laptop, maybe AirPods.
But I guess I can't see the chat. Oh well.
You could see the Zoom chat. Brooks is going to put stuff in the Zoom chat that we need to know. So, should we discuss the nominees for Times Person of the Year, or should we just get into this?
Let's sure. Let's go.
Because I mean, the nominees for Times Person of the Year made me a little nervous. Made me feel like we're getting towards the end of the world.
Yeah, I'm voting for Barbie. We said last time that we would talk about middleware and server context. And then today, after we talk about that, Michael has been reviewing some of the community proposals and things that I think maybe we'll highlight a couple of them. What looks interesting is that
I didn't have time to go through the community stuff. Sorry. All I was doing was I was just reviewing in general kind of what we already had on the roadmap and just sort of making sure that I was up to speed on all of it, because those conversations can get quite long sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and we it's funny we call this roadmap planning, but at the moment this is mostly just like roadmap communication.
Yeah. This is the time for us to sync up.
Yeah, we've got a lot of we have so many plans already. We aren't really looking at those community proposals a whole lot right now.
Yeah.
Just because it's like we got so much on our plate that we already know we need to be doing. So all right, middleware and server context. These are things that we wanted to add a long time ago. Yeah, here's an old one. So middleware, I mean, people are probably familiar with it. It's something that's been missing in Remix when we first launched Remix. Since it runs inside of a different server, like Express or on a Lambda or something like that, we kind of punted on middleware because Express already has middleware and things like that. And a couple of other use cases for middleware are also already covered by loaders. Like, oh, I want to get access to the user. It's like you can just call a function and get that user. But there are probably one of the most basic ones is just like a logger. There's no easy way in Remix to just be like, hey, log every request.
Well, unless, like you said, you just do it in an Express middleware or something.
Yeah. And so that's why we punted. I've seen some criticism sometimes where people are like, oh, they don't even have middleware. How can you be a server-side framework without middleware? And that's the reason, is because we're a server-side handler that runs inside of some other kind of actual node server or Cloudflare pages.
Yeah, so this thing kind of feels like, when we get our own middleware and we've got our own router, I mean, that's basically what Express does for you.
Yeah. So
middleware.
So yeah. So it's worked fine to just not have our own middleware, but there are a lot of abstractions that middleware are really great for, and it's not as ergonomic, not as fun to have to go do something in Express and then do something else in Remix, and it's like these two different worlds. And so by adding middleware to Remix, you can just kind of stay in the Remix world with the web fetch APIs and all that kind of stuff, and don't need to depend so much on the actual server that you're running. Remix is getting more capable with this. And then another nice benefit of it is sometimes a middleware that you have to do in Express, you end up doing a little mini router inside of it to decide, okay, which paths do I want to run this Express middleware first? And then you've got the remix routes over here too. So you kind of have to duplicate some routing logic. And so this will just kind of get rid of all that stuff, make Remix a lot more capable as a backend framework, and allow you to do middleware. So at the moment, the design of this is it's another route export. So you can export components, loaders, actions, and then you could export middleware. And this is an array of middleware functions, and they're just plain functions that get a certain set of arguments that Remix will call. So you could do a logger, you could do like some redirects, to, check a redirects file, and or after a request, you could go and actually I'll show that in a second. You could automatically drop a session in there, or I'm not sure about that one. I think context came after this, but anyway. This will depend on the single fetch proposal that we've talked about before, because you're going to want your middleware to run not too many times. So we started to implement this, and we really didn't like the way that your middleware would get called a whole bunch of times on one navigation, because when you're navigating client side, Remix makes 2, 3, 4, 5 fetches for every route that is active on the page. And so if you had 3 or 4 routes, we're going to make 3 or 4 requests, and then your middleware is going to get called 3 or 4 times. And then your route loaders are going to get called 3 or 4 times. It's just more work on the back end and more network activity and all that kind of stuff. So middleware was just another thing that made us want to do the single fetch. Now, when you do a client transition, that middleware will only be called once, and you can protect all those routes or whatever you're doing with it. But the middleware will only be called once, no matter how many routes match. Here's the signature. You'll get a request. You'll get the params that match the route.
Are you sharing your screen?
No, I'm off this morning. I'm just thinking about Christmas.
Oh, I was like, I didn't know if I was missing something.
Sorry about that.
There it is.
Yeah. We good?
Yeah, we're good. I can see it.
Yeah, so it's just a route export behind a future flag. So you'll need both single fetch and middleware in there. And then here is the current signature that we're planning on. You get your request, you get your matched params. Since you can export a middleware from any route, you're going to know those params, right? So you can just drop a middleware at the root route. You can drop a middleware inside of like an app folder, app route. You could drop it just in front of one route, and it'll protect that route, or it'll run for that route and everything below it. And then you get this next. If you've done Express middleware, you'll be familiar with that. But you can await this thing and say, hey, okay, run the rest of the app, and what's the response that's about to go out, and you can manipulate that. So, and just like in loaders and actions, you can throw the responses at any time, and that'll be returned immediately. No other middleware will be called. No, the routes won't render. It'll just say, oh, you want me to send this response? All right, I'll do that. Really useful for redirects for sure. So here's a quick example, logging request and response times. So you could bring in, if you're using TypeScript, bring in the type for this function, for the args anyway, and you say, here's the logger, request the next, figure out your start time, wait for Remix to do the rest of the app.
All the downstream, yeah.
Yep. Remix is like, hey, I called all your loaders, I rendered your components, like your entry server has been called, everything is ready to go. We have a response that we're going to send.
Yeah.
And then you can say, all right, let's format this duration with now minus the start, and then you can just log that. So logger is a great example of everything you can do with middleware.
Yeah.
And then probably drop that on the root route, export const middleware logger. And now every route will have this middleware run. Another useful one is requiring authentication. So you could just protect a whole subtree of routes, require a user. We haven't talked about this too much. We've had some other prototypes and goofing around with giving you a default session. I think we're all on the same page. We want that, but that's not explicitly stated anywhere yet. But assuming we give you a session in here, you could, yeah, you could get this from the request too. Anyway.
Well, so this is, I think, where context comes in, right? The session would be something that lives on server context.
Yeah, and we talked about a default session, but yeah, totally. So let's ignore this for now, and when we talk about context, get back to it.
Yeah.
So what you would probably do here instead, you'll have the request here.
Yeah.
And then you could get the session equals session get request dot headers dot cookie.
Well, wouldn't you actually get the context object here?
Or get it from context. Yeah. If you didn't have a context.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Let's just pretend context. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Pretend context doesn't exist yet. I could get the session from the request. So let's assume that we got the session from the request. If we don't have a user, we could set like, hey, where did they come from? So that when they log in, we can send them back. And then we can throw this redirect, send them to the login page. And now you could export this from something like a dashboard route or something, or an app route, or any parent route that then has a bunch of children, and protect everything that needs auth in just one piece of code right there.
Yep. Today,
you have to put that in every single loader in action. And we see some people sometimes goof up and they expose an endpoint. Maybe you're logged in and you don't need the user on that route, but you still want to protect the data, and people can forget to like validate that there's a session, where this way you can just put it in one spot at the top of some parent route and it'll protect all of it.
You know, that 302 status code, that always makes me think of Amazing Grace. You know, it says, I once was lost, but I now am found. 302. You're found.
Found, but go somewhere else. That is a correct URL, but you should go somewhere else.
Yep. Amazing Grace, status code 302. See other.
I think this one. Yeah, this one is in. I actually just learned about this recently. 303. So you know the back button, this is irrelevant. But you know how if you're just doing plain HTML and forms and you make a post to a new URL and then you click the back button, the browser's like, hey, are you sure you want to resubmit this?
Yeah, yeah.
If you send the browser a 303 and then click the back button from that page, the browser won't try to resubmit it. Kind of interesting.
You submit a form.
Or refresh. Sorry, if you refresh. So I post to a route.
You refresh.
And then I hit refresh. If the browser got a 303, the browser will do a get instead of a repost of what was there.
That is interesting. So I guess the thinking behind that is 302 found means like this is essentially the same resource that you were looking for, right? We found it. It's over here. Right?
Yeah.
So any data that you posted to me, it's probably safe to post to that one as well. Same resource, right? Yeah. Which in the case of a post, like in the case of a lot of redirect after a post scenarios, might not actually be what you're looking for, right? Like you posted, you know, you posted to update some record, and then you redirected to the, you know, item detail page, right? Like you don't actually, if you hard refresh that page, you don't actually want to resubmit that mutation.
Yeah, it's done. I found it. This is it.
Yeah, you just want to maybe just see the page again, fetch it fresh from the server. So 303 is actually a nicer experience in that case.
Kind of what our client transitions do also, because we don't store form data and then repost it if you're doing client-side routing and Remix. So we kind of do that already.
We should encourage people to use 303 more, maybe.
Yeah, I think one day maybe we'll switch the default on redirect to 303.
Oh, snap. Now that's you just went too far.
And then we can't sing Amazing Grace. All right. Inspecting responses. This is another great use case here. I love this one. So this one comes from some internal Shopify use cases that I've personally never used the CMS in any of the projects I've done. I've built mostly like logged in app dashboard productivity kinds of things. So I haven't done and content. I've just like it's just part of the website instead of a CMS. And so this never occurred to me. And I can't remember which team we were talking to. I think it might be the hydrogen team, where some CMSs let you configure a bunch or add a whole bunch of redirects, right? Like here are all my URLs for all my pages, and I changed the URL, so here are all my redirects. But that's an expense on your request. So if you come hit your Remix app and then you go over to the CMS and be like, hey, tell me all the redirects that you've got, every single request has to pay that expense. And most requests aren't going to be 404. So it's silly to do that up front, where my mental model has always been like, check all my redirects first and then run the app. But this is a little different, where it says, okay, run the app. So we're going to await that response, and then we can check, did my app say this is a 404? Which is why status codes are so important. When Remix hit the scene, the current React frameworks were not doing this. They were redirecting you to /404 in the URL and then sending you a 200 of a not found static page. But anyway, we can check, is this a 404? And then we can go and pay that
because it was all about SSG, right?
Yeah.
If you're statically rendering your site ahead of time, which is what Gatsby was all about, and then Next
Next leaned into that pretty hard too.
Up until V13 was pretty much static sites all the way. The best you can do is redirect to a 200 page and say 404 not found. This is not found, but you can't give them the right status code, because your CDN, which is just serving your static files, is like, what do you mean it's not found? I found this not found page. That's a 200.
Yeah, it's right here. And this would have to be bundled up as a part of your build too. You could still go check a CMS and be like, all right, now here are all my redirects.
Yeah.
But then you go add one to the CMS, and then you got to redeploy your app in order for that to. So anyway, I got on a tangent there. So your app says, hey, we don't have a URL for this. And then you can go to the CMS, pay that expense, and say, hey, CMS, do you have any redirects? And if we do, then we can throw that redirect. So this is awesome, because now you don't block every single page to go talk to your CMS to figure out what to redirect from. And right now, this is, I mean, you could do it in an Express middleware. But
see, that's a true 302 right there. That is a true 302.
I found this at somewhere else.
Yep, I found it. It's over here.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking about that 303 now. I'm pretty sure I almost never want a 302 after a post.
I mean, I don't want to say this publicly, but I remember us having this conversation 3 years ago.
I don't want to say this publicly, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, so what happened was I accidentally did 301 as the default.
Oh no, 301 is the devil.
And you were just giving me the hardest time.
Do not use 301.
You were giving me the hardest time, and I was like, oh yeah, that was bad. And so then I'm like, I gotta read all of the 300s.
Well,
I'm gonna go study all of these.
Like, oh yeah, I'm never gonna change this URL. I'll just use 301. And it's like, are you sure? Are you sure you want the 301?
All right, so here's what we should do. We should switch
I don't think
redirects.
301.
We should switch redirects default to 303, and we should throw an error on 301. We should be like, no, you don't actually want to do this.
Yeah. 301 is disallowed.
Are you sure you're never going to change?
Unless you put in a special sequence of characters. that lets us know you are elite programmer and you know what you are doing, because otherwise you're going to screw yourself. It's like turning on HSTS on your website before you're ready, and then like you just hose yourself, or like a bad like service worker deploy or something. Like there are certain things that you just like
just don't do it.
Once you do that and it gets in the cache or it gets in the like you're hosed.
It's over. Nothing is permanent.
You know what would be interesting though is to, and I don't know if this would be too magic, but we give people a function called redirect. If redirect was like, in the case of a get like this, I'm going to default to 302 if you don't give me a status code. In the case of a post, a mutation, I'm going to default to 303 if you don't give me a status code.
I like that.
Could be interesting, right? Like,
yeah.
Like you said, you were saying earlier, like, oh, we should switch the default. I'm not comfortable with that because I think 302 is what you want on a get.
Right? Yeah, I agree. Now,
but on a post, like, default to 303, baby.
Look at that, Michael. We were both right. We were just missing the nuance.
Yeah, I mean, could be cool.
All right, so we don't know what it's going to look like, but Matt is the one who's been doing this work before and looking into it, and he's like, yeah, middleware is all going to be in React Router, and so we're going to be able to do client middleware as well, which will be really interesting. I have no idea what that looks like. As Matt gets into the work, we'll see what that looks like, but theoretically, you should be able to have server middleware and client middleware on the same route. And so maybe you want to check like, I have no idea. I can't think of any of the use cases right now. Maybe we want to get a jot from local storage and then stick it in the request headers to the remix server, right? Like just some kind of interesting things there. I know I was talking to one of the first party app teams at Shopify, and we were like, oh, client middleware would be really useful here too. Can't remember what it was though. Anyway, we'll iterate out the use cases of that as we get into it. But that's what Matt's thinking right now, is that we'll be able to enable both.
I mean, I guess if you needed to do a client side redirect.
Oh, a very simple one is we've got client loader.
Side navigation. You click on a link. No, don't go there. Go here.
Well, and with client loader, you're going to need that. Like this use case up here, the require user. You'll totally want that with just client loaders and client routes, right? With SPA mode that's coming.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. We went to law. Yeah.
And so here you'll check your Firebase SDK
or user. Oh, we didn't find it. You need to go over here first. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have a jot or you're going to have an SDK from some service or something, and your middleware can check that and then say, oh, go to the login page. Yeah.
I've never heard anybody pronounce it jot, but when you said that, I knew exactly what you were talking about. You're talking about JWTs, right?
Yeah, I was talking to, seems like so I've never used those. I've always used cookie sessions. And everyone I've talked to about it, I used to say I can't even say it anymore, JWT, and everyone I've talked to says jot.
So that must be a Utah thing.
A Utah thing. Mountain. I picked it up in the mountains where I hurt my finger.
I was on the ski lift with Kent, and he's talking about his jots. All right. No.
On the topic of accents and dialects, do you remember riding in a car in Sydney, Australia with like 5 people? And everyone was from a different country with like a different accent. And they were starting to say that you and I said some words wrong. Like that the American version of it was weird. And then you said, hang on. Here is why I know that I don't have an accent.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of you can understand me, but there are things that you say and I can't understand you.
Well, because I have
And then,
relatives like that. I have relatives, like some of my family that lives in Scotland. They're like, I'm like, wait, what? What are you saying? Because just the accent is so thick, and so that's how. But they always understand exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, that's always cracked me up because it's true. We speak TV English.
Yeah.
Except not me. I have a few Utah words. All right, so that is middleware. Let's go check out context. So middleware is like, I want to do something as the request comes in, and I want to do something as the request goes out. Redirect, add headers, log, whatever. Context is a little different, and if you're familiar with Express, it does. Express middleware does both of these jobs that we've split up into two. So a lot of middleware in Express and other systems allow the middleware to like add values to some kind of context object. So you get like rec.user, right? In Express, you can be like, oh, I want to get the user from the request and then put it on rec.user. And then all your routes and your other middleware can inspect rec.user and put it on there. So Express middleware lets you both like protect things, read headers, check headers, log things, as well as add some contextual information to that request. And we started going down that path, but what we didn't like is that now creates a data fetching waterfall. If I was on a route that wanted to talk to my CMS, it wanted to get my user from some user service, and it wanted to fetch some product data from Shopify, it would make sense to make those three separate middleware, right? And then each one of them could add like rec.user, rec.cms, and then rec.product or something, right? Or Shopify SDK. Mm-hmm. And all those are asynchronous. And so the middleware needs to run in order. You need to do this middleware first because it can bail before the next middleware. And this one can bail before the next middleware. And so we didn't want to create that waterfall of data loading because it's going to be super convenient to add these things to a context. So a primary difference between middleware and context and why we've separated them is that middleware gets run sequentially so that you can bail early, and context gets run in parallel so that you can fetch things in parallel and speed things up. Because we're necessarily creating some waterfalls here. Middleware has to go first, context goes, and then loaders and actions can go. And so we're just trying to compress one of those waterfalls wherever we possibly can, and that's where context shows up. So a context function gets a request, match, and its parent context. These signatures, sorry, I wrote these really quickly. We're gonna have to flesh these out quite a bit. I can't remember if we actually get that. See, because then I've got it different right here. I was in a hurry to get this stuff going. Here, let's look at it this way. We got the request, we got the params, and we got the parent context right now. We might need something like this, but we'll see. Right now, we're gonna start here and see if it's enough. So you can see it looks a lot like middleware, except for you get the parent context instead of next, right? So context can't read set headers or any of that kind of stuff. They can just look at, well, I guess they can read the request headers, but they can't await next and then like do stuff on the way out. That's what middleware does. So the purpose of context is just to add values to your loaders and actions and share them. So in a route, you could say, all right, for my context, I should also say this is all to replace adapter context. So in Remix today, in your adapter, there's a get context method where you can bridge the gap from like Express over to Remix. But people started using it, nothing to do with bridging the gap of their server. They're just using it for like dependency injection, just to get a bunch of SDKs and stuff that need to be request aware into their loaders and actions. So here you can say, all right, I want to get my data storage context. I want to get my payments context. And you can see it's an object instead of an array because we call them all in order, or sorry, we call them all in parallel. and then they have a name here that will get passed in onto the context object. So now your loader will get this context here, and then you can pull off the DB and the payments from there. Action gets them too. Middleware also gets context.
Yeah, it's just sort of this general purpose primitive that goes all the way down the request.
Yep.
Lifecycle. One way that I think about middleware and context is I like to think about middleware as running serially and context running in parallel. That's true here, right?
Yeah.
At least in the implementation. So it's interesting, right? Because you have, they have like slightly different semantics, middleware and context. But you can do a lot of the same things in them, right? Like you can redirect out of a context.
Yeah, you can redirect out of a context.
If you needed to, right?
Yeah, if you're like, oh, I can't make my database connection here.
Exactly.
We gotta just throw a response 503. Which one says that you're like missing something?
Like a
service unavailable. Yeah, I can't connect to my database, so I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, but what I was gonna say is, like for example, that example that you just had, right? Or like an auth example, right? Some people might say, well, I think about auth as being like a middleware. It's this thing that needs to run before my other middlewares can run, and if it doesn't, then I want to just bail and get out of here. Like I don't want to proceed at all with the request, right? But somebody else might think of auth as like, just one of a sort of list of things that they need to do before they can proceed with the request, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, one is grab my database connection, and the other one is, okay, make sure we have a user, right? And if any one of those things fails, then bail. So yeah, so I don't know that we can say, for this type of task, do this here. For this type of task, do this here. We're basically just giving you the tools, right? And saying, here's some tools. These run like this. These are the semantics of middleware. These are the semantics of context. Do what you will with them, right? Like figure out how to build the system that you need to build, but we've got you covered basically on all of the primitives. What I'm saying?
Totally. And like with the user one is perfect because it's like I want access to that data, so it should probably be a context.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I have a user so that all of my content, like maybe I have 2-3 contexts below that middleware that depend on the user also.
Yeah. And
so each one of those is going to have to check. If you don't have the user middleware first, each one of those contexts is going to have to be like, well, do I have a user? Yes or no? No. All right, I'm going to throw. But if you put a middleware in front of it, now I definitely have a user, so my context doesn't even have to think about
exactly. Yeah.
Do I have a user? My database connection, my Stripe stuff, like everything knows there's going to be a user because the middleware protected them.
Yeah, it's almost like hoisting state up in your React components. In this case, you're like hoisting up, business logic, saying like, okay, that's already taken care of in this middleware. Everything downstream doesn't care about it.
Yeah, you make sure that I have a user, and then everyone else can just plan on it.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. And so, like middleware and everything else, you can export a context from a route, and we're gonna have to play with this. We're not sure. I'm not sure if context or middleware should run first at a route. I think context should at the moment, because maybe you want to I don't know. We'll see. But either way, you'll have control over it by creating like layout routes and your route hierarchy, and it'll get really gross in the file system. And we're working on being able to configure routes much more cleanly with context and middleware. But right now, we're just going to ship them on the routes. We'll talk about some other stuff later, I think, when we have a good proposal.
Yeah.
Written
So
up.
this isn't even a decision in
Yeah, with our other design
reverb stuff we're working on.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you associate it all with a single route, now you have to make this call, don't you?
I'm guessing context first is more useful because your middleware might want to use the database or the user, or but I'm not sure. I like this example right here. Query timing headers, if you want to like put into your server timings header so that you can, I don't know if people know a lot about this. Who has one of these? We don't have it. What's his website? I think he's got them on his. Oop. Let's see. Oh, wait, if I hover this. Yeah, check it out. Server timing. So he's got all these values over here that he's putting in a server timings header to see like, oh, how long did my MDX take? How long did my scheduled events? How long did the sort take? So you can add these server timing headers so that you can look at these responses and see in the headers in the dev tools here how long things take. So that's kind of here you might have a database in context, and then you could go ask the database like, hey, how long did tell me all your queries you made and how long they all took, and then you could drop that into a server timings header or something. So I think I'm anticipating you want context first so that your middleware can use things from context. But that's the opposite of the user use case that we just came up with, where it's like, oh no, I would want my middleware to say, yeah, I have a user for sure, and then I can run my context under that.
Yeah, I just don't even want to make this decision for people. I want to
Yeah.
like I want to avoid making this decision entirely. It really is a limitation of the current model, right? Everything hangs off these routes.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. I forgot about this part. What if context were just a middleware? And you could like drop it in here.
Well, then we lose what I was just talking about, right? Where sometimes you want it to run in parallel, sometimes you want it to run serially.
Forgot that. Yeah, like it's a here. Let me
Now if it's just a middleware, now it always runs serially, no matter what it is.
Oh no. So like I imagine this object right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're saying
Is
do
placed.
this, do all these in parallel, then do this.
Yeah. Huh. All right. We got some design to figure out.
Just makes me wonder, like, how far we go down this road before we. So the new type safe router is
I don't know if we've even talked about that publicly.
We have not. I mentioned it to Tanner at one point.
Yeah, it's just not even a decision there. You just nest it however you want.
Yeah, we should get that on the roadmap at some point and like figure out how to get the work that we're doing there into this, right? Because gosh, feels very related. I think the main blocker to that was we couldn't do it on. Well, anyway, I can talk to Matt about this, because I think he's the one that's doing a lot of this work, right? I mean, I think you said he's already done it.
Yeah, he did it once, and it'll be a little different this time.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we'll this is just a proposal, right? We haven't totally made every decision.
right.
And this isn't an architecture meeting for the public to watch you and I scratch our heads at questions.
Yeah.
But we can absolutely just ship middleware. Like, context is super useful, but it's not like, not having middleware is preventing use cases. Not having context is just decreasing a little bit of code that you write. So we can, to not make this decision, we can be like, all right, we can add the middleware export right now, but we're not going to do context until we figure out some other things too. I'm happy with that too.
Yeah, middleware feels like something we can ship very, like, quickly up front, right? Like, you hit this,
run all this stuff before the
functions we need to run first. You hit this one, there's a couple of functions we need to run first, right?
Yeah.
It's once context comes into play, then it's
anyway, yeah, and then context comes through into middleware and loaders and actions, and so you could
get your stuff on the context and use it.
Yeah. There's some databases. I was using Fauna, and something that's really cool in Fauna is you know how with like a SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, or whatever, it's like its own module, and it like makes a connection to the database, and it's just kind of this global thing that's around. In Fauna, your database connection can be scoped to the user that's logged in. So Fauna has both authentication and data storage. And so when you need to look at the request and see who's my user, and then you go make a database connection, say, all right, here's my database. And it's really cool because now you're scoped to just, like, the permissions and stuff are just automatically handled for you. You don't have to worry, oh, am I going to accidentally write a query that this user shouldn't have access to? The database itself knows this user can't perform that query. And so your app logic can quit thinking about that part. And so that's where context is super useful. Instead of just having like this module that's a database connection that you import, like Prisma or other ORMs, or just a SQL connection, it's request dependent. And so that's where context makes a lot of sense, is you need to make that database. Oh, that's the example here. Get my user from the request, and now I can go get my database connection and return that because it's request dependent. Yeah, that's context. Maybe we aren't going to ship this as soon as we thought.
Yeah, it's just when you start talking about like, oh, which one runs first, then
yeah. All right.
Anyway, yeah, stuff to think about. Food for thought.
Whichever one shows up in the module first runs first.
Source order.
We're going to sort your exports.
Oh man, that was the craziest part to me about that whole exports key and package JSON. Like the order in that object is actually it's important, and
it's not an array, right? It's an object of keys.
It's an object of keys, and they say like, oh, if you have types, you should put the types key first. And I'm like, what the?
I remember reading the ES5 spec.
And I know somebody who like worked on it, who knows all the constraints, is going to look at me right now and be like, he's an idiot. He doesn't get it. It's order dependent because this very important reason. But to me, on the face of it, just seems like it's so crazy.
I would need to go find the spec, and maybe it's different now. But I remember reading the ES5 spec a long time ago, and it in the spec it says that like the order of these keys, when you do object keys, the order of those keys is not guaranteed to be the order that you defined them. Like, it's just not part of JavaScript, at least back then.
Yeah, but there's an enumerable order assigned to every object, right? So for in, right, is
that one will get it in order.
Yeah, no. So this I think this object keys and for in are deterministic.
Okay, so it's for of on an object because we didn't have object keys.
Well, it used to be that way, but or they used to say that, but in reality, when it all came out in the wash in the implementations, everybody had a deterministic order that they were storing the keys in. And so I don't think it ever actually happened that, you would run a for of loop on the same object twice and you would get different.
Yeah, they're all deterministic, but the spec itself said it doesn't need to be. But everybody,
yeah. So it was in the spec, and then everybody was just like, yeah, whatever, ignore that. And the
I swear I had a bug once because of this years ago. Yeah. And then that's when I ended up reading the spec and I was like, oh crap, I can't do that. And so I've always been very sensitive to any time I hear that, we use the order of the keys. And I'm like, no.
Give me, yeah. But
you can't do a 301.
Seems so crazy, but okay, so that's one thing, right? Okay. These objects are ordered, right? The keys are ordered. But the other thing to me is like, why does it need to be first, right? Like the types key in the exports of package JSON, why does it need to be first? Because couldn't you literally just say, if you're a bundler or a compiler or whatever, you're reading package JSONs, couldn't you just say, give me the package exports. Okay, I need the, I guess it's because it kind of works like a switch statement. It's like there are some keys in there that can be there are some cases that are, I guess, later on that are sort of more general, more like default cases, and some cases that you hit higher up that are like more specific cases. So for example, if you have an export that is very specific for, bun or web workers or whatever, you want to put that like before the like, what is it called? Like module or something, which is the very, very last one. Not the type, go one down, exports. Yeah, that one. Wait, exports, main, conditional exports. That's what we want. Yeah. So like
the type there.
Yeah. So the import and the require, these are like sort of like the default cases in your switch statement, right? So like, if nothing else matches, this is what we're going to do when you're in ESM. This is what we're going to do when you're in CommonJS, right? And then you get all the other ones that the different bundlers are adopting. Like there's one for Node, as you can see down below, but then there's also one for like Bun and Worker D and all things. And those things I think are like more specific.
Yeah. They don't have
so that's why you go in order. You're like marching down the list, like, am I Bun? No. Am I Worker D? No. Am I ESM? Yes. Okay. Use the import one.
Yeah.
But
then I guess there's precedent. So if we wanted to, we could just say, wherever I put that
precedent. Hey, we didn't do this. All right. The package JSON folks, they did it first. All right. So just source order is significant here. Sorry. Can't go back on this. I was refactoring the code and just like moved one variable declaration below another one and the website broke.
We'd have so many bugs around like barrel exports and stuff too.
I don't get it. Why'd the website break?
All I did was move some code.
So the other thing to think about here is shredding, right? Bundle shredding when we're talking about this. When we're talking about middleware, right? Is when we take a website and we split it up into a bunch of different bundles for different workers, that middleware has to go with it, right? It has basically all of the middleware and components for a specific branch of that tree need to be in that bundle, right?
And parent routes and their middleware.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You basically need to be able to render an entire branch in a single worker. So
yeah, go to all the leaves of your route tree, and then climb up every single path, and each one of those becomes its own bundle.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's see. What do we got? Did we get any questions in the chat? Alex Anderson, there's some chat in Discord about how client data can be used to address network errors, but it requires putting client loader in every route.
Oh yeah, that's where client middleware would be nice.
Any plans for client middleware to simplify this? I'm not sure what he's talking about. Client.
So
network errors in client loader.
Yeah, so they aren't in charge of their own fetch, right? In Remix. Let me see if I understand what we're talking about. I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna share a different. Oh wait, I'm sharing my whole screen. You know what? I'll just share VS Code.
Yeah, we saw like your personal DMs and everything is pretty crazy.
No, I put it on Do Not Disturb. I learned my lesson. So let's see. You've got like so Remix makes a fetch, right? When you're navigating around.
Yep.
And you can catch your errors in your action or your loaders and send that information down. But you can't catch a network error on the server and then send it to the client, because the problem is the network didn't work. Right? Your connection got super spotty.
Yeah, because Remix is automatically doing
it's doing the fetch for you.
The fetch for you, yeah.
And so with client loader, you got what did we end up calling this? Call server loader or fetch server?
Yeah, server loader.
Server loader.
Yeah.
All right. So you could now server loader.
Yeah.
I guess we'd want to await it so that we can actually catch it.
Yeah. Exactly,
yeah, and then we get this error. And now you can like do something else. So you could like return network error.
Okay. So this is what Alex is talking about when he's saying network errors inside client loader.
Yeah.
Any plans for client middleware to simplify this?
Yeah, so now here you could be like, oh, if there's a data network error, then we can do something else, right? Your network sucks. So he's saying, can client middleware help this? My intuition is I bet it will. I have no idea what client middleware looks like yet. That's Matt has just been like, yeah, we'll totally be able to do it. And I believe him. But I imagine in like your root route or something like that. Let's just make a fake one right now. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Let's call it client middleware. It's probably not going to be this. Network errors. Then this thing.
Is that's a const, right?
Oh yeah. Netlify. Network errors.
Sure. Just implement all of Netlify as a
Yeah, I have no idea what this looks like. So there's going to be some arguments in here. Let's just say that there's going to be a next in there. Maybe it's not even like, I don't even know if it's a response in client middleware. It's something. And then like, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know what this looks like. But hopefully there's some way to do something like this, right? Like Remix just tried to do all of its fetches. There was a network error
bubbled up to here. We caught it.
Yeah.
I think maybe you wrap your next in a try catch, right?
That's
how we were doing it in Reverb, is you would wrap your next in a try catch.
Yeah.
And then now you can handle it here.
Yeah. And then
oh man, we really need to ship that work. We really need to ship that work.
So I don't know what all of this stuff looks like in on the server. It makes sense. You're throwing responses, returning responses. But if it's just client middleware, what we're talking about is remixes making fetches. And when we have single fetch, it's only one. And so maybe we give you that response or something in there of what we just tried to do. Yeah, whatever this next means, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of use cases that I would want client middleware to be able to handle. Right now, what happens if you get a network error? We just throw to an error boundary, probably. We have a try catch around our fetches, and then
exactly.
Yeah, it just goes to the error boundary. Which I'm like, I don't know. You don't have a network, so like, what else are you gonna show them other than a big error page?
Well, yeah. I mean, what are you gonna do when you catch it? You're probably gonna want to like show some error, right? So I think throwing it to an error boundary and letting you handle it there, I think that's a great way to handle it.
Yeah, and that's what we already do.
Really want to have a side effect, like you want to log it somewhere, you want to send it to your, error reporting software.
Yeah.
Just throw a use effect in your error boundary and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, I'd probably monkey patch window.fetch. And then like you catch everything. Make my own middleware.
No, you wouldn't.
I would. You can't mess that up. No one's gonna mess that
up. No, monkey patching globals, how could you possibly mess that up? No, nobody's ever messed that up in the history of messing things up.
Look, man, I was born in MooTools.
Oh, that didn't mess anything up.
And then I did Ember too. And what do we have? Array.set and get what they.
When I think of MooTools, sometimes I wonder what Valerio is doing these days.
Oh,
he's like
probably drinking milk.
There are so many people who, he's mad for milk.
He's mad for milk.
There are so many people who have like sort of come in and out of the JavaScript ecosystem, over the years, and just crazy characters, and you just wonder like, where are these people? I want to get them all in a room and have like a big like reunion party.
Yeah, why are you still here?
Call up Dean Edwards, be like, hey man,
you still got that server running in your kitchen?
Call up Jack. What was his name? Jack.
The
guy who did the Dion would remember his name. He did did all that really impressive UI work with that UI library. What the heck? I used it for one of my jobs. I can't remember what it was called now.
Sprout Core?
No, it wasn't. No, it was something like that. It was not Sprout Core. It
wasn't that one.
Gosh dang it.
YUI.
I'll remember it after this call. And then
do we have other questions? My name is still React Training.
That's the only one that Brooks dropped in the chat. So,
all right.
I think we're all good for today. I think that's a good place to wrap it for today, personally.
Yeah, on a big old question mark.
To wrap it, yeah. Well, we discussed it. I think. Yeah, everybody knows kind of as far as we've gotten with it.
We definitely need to explore use cases for client middleware and see if it's justified. But in the end, middleware is happening in React Router, so it's going to be there. It's just a matter of exposing it or not in a Remix API.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining into our roadmap planning live stream. Hopefully this was insightful, helps give you an idea of kind of where our heads are at and what you have to look forward to. By the way, we talked mostly today about stuff that's on the like future. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that we're like shipping right now. That was in like the in progress column. Like we discussed stuff in the to-do column. There's a bunch of stuff like in the in progress column and in the shipped column. So if you haven't checked out a Remix release in a while, go ahead and check out our release notes and get caught up, because we've shipped a bunch of stuff recently. So anyway, thanks for joining in, and hopefully we'll see you all next